Hello and welcome to the Daily Lawyer Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today is yet another episode in our Careers in the Law series. And today we are going to be speaking about ADR law, litigation, practice. ADR is alternate dispute resolution. So everything from arbitration, conciliation, negotiation, mediation comes under the gamut of ADR. We have with us my dear friend Shriya Luke, who is a litigation lawyer and an arbitration expert. I can attest to that because that is how I met Shriya. We worked together closely for many years. Shriya is not just a litigation lawyer and an ADR practitioner, but she's also a Reiki practitioner. She is a licensed yoga instructor. She's also very passionate about development of women and children and works with an NGO. She's also a corporate legal trainer. So she does so many things. And most importantly, she's a great friend. And I'm so happy that she's here today. Shriya, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me, Jenna.
I have so many things to talk to you, but before we get into that, can you tell us why did you do law and your whole journey from being a law student to where you are today?
All right. So I decided on law pretty early, I think. I think it was about class 11. And a friend back then was working with a public prosecutor. And the stories that he brought back from his chamber were, I think, my first source of inspiration. Second, for those who know me already, I've always enjoyed interacting with people, and this profession ensures that you are always interacting with people, not just from a particular background, but from varied, backgrounds and sectors. So that is something that has always pulled me towards the profession. I did my law at Amity IP, followed by a lot of internships to explore different areas and sectors. I was a very curious student, and I ruled out on criminal and corporate law pretty early in my pretty early years of my law school, and then focused on disputes as my area of practice. And I think that primarily came from the thrill of going to courts and briefing senior counsel, and the kind of knowledge and the kind of exposure that you have when you're meeting different seniors who are appearing as well as who have specialized in different niches. The kind of exposure you get, that really pushed me towards disputes. And with the passing years, I developed keen interest in arbitration and commercial litigation, which is what my core area of practice is now. I practiced with Tully & Co. for about 6 years in the disputes team, and now I'm at JSA again at the disputes team, which focuses on commercial litigation and arbitration.
Shreya, you are the first guest on our podcast who has actually said that I decided to do law very early, because most of us, me included, we came into law by the process of elimination. Like, we didn't want to do engineering, we didn't want to do medicine, we obviously didn't want to get a BSc or do something like that. And then, most of the people who've been on the podcast so far have come to law by the process of elimination. You're the first one who had a very thought out, clear plan. Then you did all these different internships, and there's a brilliant answer, especially for young law students, because now everybody wants to do all the fancy things. They want to do laws relating to NFT and metaverse and all that. So I don't know how you decided to rule out corporate law, because that was like the trending thing. Everybody wanted to get into corporate and securities law. So I don't know why you decided to rule out corporate law. But before I ask you that question, I just want to, for those who don't know or don't have a background, can you just tell them what does a litigation lawyer do, or what does a disputes lawyer do?
Sure. So briefly speaking, litigation is the formal adversarial court system for resolution of disputes. So that entails going to a court. There are several forums. There are different tribunals and commissions in India. So essentially, you're before the courts, as opposed to your arbitration, which is an alternative dispute resolution practice, and it has gained traction, particularly in the last couple of decades. Now, arbitration is a contract-based binding form of dispute resolution, and there are different kinds of arbitration as well. So you have ad hoc arbitration, where parties are responsible for appointment of arbitrators, for conduct of the proceedings, as well as determination of the award. And then you have something which is gaining popularity now in India. It has, of course, been globally recognized. Institutional arbitrations, where um, there are different institutions that can be appointed for administrating the entire proceeding, the arbitration proceeding. So, like for example, we have the International Arbitration and Mediation Center in Hyderabad. We have the Indian Council of Arbitration. We have Mumbai Center. We similarly have a Delhi Center. Then there's LCIA, so on and so forth. So, as a litigation lawyer who's practicing with a law firm in the initial years, your role is more of that of a briefing counsel. So, you will be briefing either a senior advocate or a senior lawyer who presents your case before the court. But your role is sort of in the initial years confined to strategy, client management, research, presenting the case in the best manner that you can. When it comes to, there are some firms now in India, and this is gaining popularity, that even litigation lawyers in firms, they are arguing matters themselves. So the whole practice of appointing a senior or appointing a counsel to present your case before a court, that is slowly being eliminated. Of course, it cannot be entirely eliminated, but for smaller matters, of course, you can.
I've been asked a question by a couple of first-year lawyers actually to get an ADR lawyer on the podcast because they really want to know what they are quite enamored by this ADR universe, so they want to know what a lawyer does, and you've answered that. But if you are speaking to somebody like them who are in the first-year law and they want to know all of these different law streams, what would you say would make a good litigation lawyer or a good arbitration lawyer? And is there a difference in the kind of skill sets or the approach that you need for both of these fields?
So I think overall for both streams, I would say staying on top of the legal landscape, being thorough with what the matter is, what the law is, and law is also so vast and it's always changing. So staying on top of that helps in both, be it ADR, be it litigation, or be it any other practice area. But specifically, just to answer your question, when it comes to ADR, ADR involves your arbitration, conciliation, mediation. Now, just to give a very brief background, arbitration, conciliation is primarily governed by the Arbitration and Conciliation Act. So, and now there is also a mediation bill which is pending. So the kind of the conduct of the proceedings when it comes to arbitration is governed by the Act itself. And just like the CPC or the Commercial Courts Act, which deals with your commercial litigation or litigation as such, the Act lays out the entire procedure to be followed from the, from the drafting of the pleadings to the filing of the pleadings to the filing of evidence, the kind of arbitrators that can be appointed, the kind of arbitrators that cannot be appointed, the mechanism to be followed, the timelines, etc. So it is a streamlined process, and yes, ADR has gained a lot of traction in India, both a legislative framework-wise as well as judicial precedents are aiming to promote ADR not only as an alternative anymore, but as the preferred mode, and that is because the entire adversarial court system is extremely overburdened and there is a high level of pendency. So now we're seeing the global community leaning towards ADR, and that is because they have reaped benefits of ADRs both for containment of disputes as well as quick resolution. So the only skill set I would say, in addition to what you require for litigation, and that one must focus on because mediation and conciliation are becoming the next big things after arbitration, is your negotiation skill, which is something which we are not actively taught at a law school level. Why during my law school days as well, we had moot courts, etc., which were again on the adversarial system of law rather than the negotiation, aiming to build your negotiation skills. So that is something that one must focus on for ADR in addition to everything else.
Do you think for a young lawyer aiming to get into ADR, do you think he or she can do it can you have only a career in ADR with no litigation sort of background or internships or experience, or you think having a base in litigation for a couple of years, or doing multiple internships with a counsel in the courts is better, and then you get into ADR specifically?
So I believe you don't need to necessarily have litigation experience per se in order to pursue a career in arbitration or in conciliation, negotiation, and basically to practice ADR modes. However, having said that, working with a senior is always beneficial because the the way you present your case, that skill set, uh, and you also need a mentor in your formative years. So counsel practice is definitely a wonderful idea, and a lot of counsels are now also actively doing arbitration. So of course, definitely having that base um, of litigation and ADR while working with the counsel, it gives you a good standing to grow in your practice once you completely decide to move to arbitration, if you do.
I want to now go back to this. You said that you tried so many internships and then you ruled out corporate law. So, first of all, why did you rule out corporate law? And then I'll ask you the next question that's connected to that.
Um, I think it was a comparative for me always because I think it's at the end of the day, it whatever you do, no matter what you do, you should be passionate about. And I simply wasn't passionate about general corporate. And my corporate internships were really limited to general corporate, and that's something that I found not suitable for myself.
Because when we were, the general sort of tendency or the general idea that we had when we were studying or looking for jobs was that corporate jobs pay you more, and it was like that. Corporate jobs would pay you more. In a corporate law firm, you are getting far more than if you get into a litigation law firm. So do you think there is a pay disparity in both today? Also, at some point it gets evened out, I think, but do you think there is a pay disparity between if you are a litigation lawyer or if you are an ADR lawyer versus if you want to get into like a corporate securities and all those non-litigation law streams?
So I think with the kind of firms that I worked with, there isn't pay. I haven't seen pay disparity at all. But definitely, overall, if you start, there's definitely pay disparity if you choose to do litigation under a council, and if you choose to do litigation uh, in a firm. But within a firm system, I haven't really seen disparity in litigation and corporate lawyers.
Or if you choose to do if you choose to practice litigation in only a litigation firm versus someone who goes to a bigger sort of firm or a core corporate firm. They may not be one of the big firms but more boutique firms, corporate. Do you think there is a pay disparity? And
Yes, yes, I believe there is, and I think it's that kind of stems from the that kind of depends from firm to firm and the kind of work that they're doing, the kind of clients that they have, etc. So that kind of disparity may continue even in the longer run.
Yeah, but then if you want to advise young lawyers or young law students,
Correct.
how would you ask them to look at this pay disparity versus the kind of practice that they like? What would you advise them to focus on when they are choosing their stream of law, or when they're looking at possible career options?
So personally, for me, speaking personally, for me, money was not the driving force, and I don't think if it is not a constraint, it should be. I think in your formative years, the focus should be on learning as much as you can, because uh, the first couple of years really lay the foundation for the kind of lawyer you are going to be. And it's always, I would say, it's better to choose a boutique firm where the responsibility on a young lawyer is way more than as compared to A0 level at a bigger firm, so that it gives you that exposure in early days. And of course, from then on, doors will open and the money will come. So I think that's my advice to young lawyers, to not just focus on the money aspect right at the beginning, if you can.
That's brilliant advice. And I actually will say the same thing. If anyone asks me, or whoever has asked me, I've said the same thing. Shreya, and I know for a fact that you've handled a variety of clients, from government agencies to corporates, to big corporates, small corporates, and everyday, individuals as well, in the whole gamut. In your experience with all of these people, what do you think are the common mistakes that people make in their lives or in their businesses, that with just some basic legal knowledge, of with a few simple tweaks, they can save a lot of time, money, effort, distress down the road?
So I think, having worked with different companies and different organizations, what I've noticed is, and this I always joke around with my clients, is that nothing is more expensive than a cheap lawyer. So getting the right legal advice at the right time makes a big difference. It's also important as a lawyer to not only, push your clients to pursue a dispute wherever there is a possibility of a settlement or the possibility of containment of a dispute. Then as a lawyer, it is your responsibility to ensure that that course is being recommended. And the third thing is that, I understand that of course budgets can become a concern, but please have a lawyer on board who is going to advise you correctly, taking into consideration not just legal aspects but also the practical aspects of your business. Because as a global community and as a business community, a lot of times just making decisions legally is not helpful. The practical aspects need to be looked into in the long run, of course.
As a legal counsel, it was initially difficult for me to transition from being a litigation lawyer, being a lawyer in a firm, having no background in business, to becoming a legal counsel, and then understanding that we cannot only look at the law, but we also have to look at the business side of things. So I completely understand, and I know that I got that from you when we worked together. But there's something else that you told me earlier, which I found also very interesting in this, with answer to this question, when you said that, please don't go to one lawyer for everything. Like you said that firms usually tend to go to one, companies tend to go to one law firm for all their problems. Whereas, like, if I have a toothache, even my 5-year-old daughter will know that we should not go to an ENT, we have to go to a dentist. But when it comes to law, people don't realize that there are so many specializations for everything. We'll come to you for matrimonial matters, and we will come to you for aviation law, and we will come to you for general contract work. So I really think that was a very important point you made in your answer.
So I think there are firms like, for example, JSA. It's a full service law firm where that they can cater to disputes, they can cater to your securities, they can cater to your M&As. So choosing a full service law firm is kind of a solution to that problem, because one, it's ensuring quality of work, because across the board, no matter what team is handling a matter, the kind of quality of work will be standard across the board. And second, they are not keen on that one team handling all your matters, because different areas of dispute require different kind of specialization, and there are so many niches. So a full service law firm, of course, is a great idea to have on board for any company.
Yeah, that is actually a useful solution. Now, if you have to say, like, to just sum up this whole section on the law before we speak about the next section, which is on career breaks, and that's something I really want to talk to you about. What do you think is lacking in the legal industry today? And just from a perspective of people who are getting into the industry and they're going to grow in this industry, how do you think we can all contribute to that as well, like contribute positively to that as well?
So I think what is lacking today is, one, infrastructure. To some extent, the kind of training that we are getting at law schools, that also needs to change and evolve, uh, keeping with the legal landscape. So, for example, if ADR is the next big thing, and ADR is now actually becoming a preferred mode of dispute resolution, then the kind of skill set that you need to have for ADR, which is your negotiation skills and your even drafting specific settlement agreements or negotiation agreements, conciliation agreements, etc. That kind of training at a law school level becomes very relevant then. Secondly, of course, infrastructure is overall lacking when it comes to the legal system today, which is on the adversarial side, which is also one reason why ADR is becoming the preferred mode, because it's easily administered and you actually seeing a dispute, end to end. Whereas when it comes to the court system, there's heavy pendency, there's a lack of expertise to some extent when it comes to, like, now with the Commercial Courts Act being in place, there are of course special courts being established, with judges being appointed who have that knowledge and that commercial background to in order to deal with commercial matters altogether, that commercial understanding. But overall, that was lacking earlier. And of course, in keeping with the time, post pandemic, the importance of recognizing how technology can play a big role in administrating justice in the entire legal system, that is something which is lacking today. But yes, I see a lot of initiatives being taken by the government today to kind of fill in for that lacuna. And I hope in the years to come, we will see technology being used more and more to administer justice, which can, of course, uh, really help in smoothing the entire process.
So I think it's a good answer that you gave, because you've like covered everything. And I think for anyone who wants to contribute in this, they'll have lot of ways that they can find in your answer to contribute. Okay, so now I want to move to another section of our podcast, which is basically taking career breaks. And I know you took a career break, and it is inspiring to talk about that, because somewhere the general narrative is that you get in, you work your head off, and you have to, everybody has to work very hard, at least in this profession. And then at some point you end up either burning out, or I don't know, you have to focus completely on the profession, and sometimes you don't end up focusing on your personal life, or then some other things go for a toss. So taking the decision to take a career break or to take a sabbatical is quite brave, because it sort of, you have to put your life on hold. There are uncertainties. You don't know whether you're going to get back to this. You don't know how your life is going to pan out after that. You don't know whether the job is still there for you or not, or you'll get another job at the same level, because your trajectory is broken that way. So first of all, how did you think of taking a career break, and what did you learn in that process?
Okay, so I think yes, sabbaticals are far from common in India, and I think that is the reason why it took so long to take one. Because every time I wanted to take a sabbatical, there was some form of discouragement either from my inner circle or otherwise. And the general narrative that people promote is that little or no breaks. That's the neutral norm, and it's been kind of handed down from generation to generation, and it kind of continues, right? So, what our seniors were doing, our seniors did, and what our seniors are doing, we will do, and what we are doing, our juniors will do. So that kind of continues. And I feel that the other factor that I've noticed is the gripping fear of being ousted from the system altogether. Be it your face time before the courts or time away from your law firm. And as the millennials will call it, the FOMO, which is fear of missing out. So I understand people have constraints, and there is the fear factor playing in the background. But if you are someone who can fit in a break, then you must. And although my sabbatical, I mean, I'd been thinking about a sabbatical for a long time, but it was because of a personal reason that I decided to go on a sabbatical. And based on my personal experience, I can say that it can leave you feeling extremely energized. One thing that I would really like to add here is that there are more and more law firms today who are adapting to the sabbatical culture, recognizing the importance of breaks and recognizing that the profession can be overwhelming and is a high stress profession. So breaks can really be helpful. I'm now at JSA, like I said, and they promote a very healthy work environment, and they in fact do have a policy for sabbaticals. So there are more firms like that, and it is something that is being recognized now.
Shreya, how do you, like, for a person who's decided to take a sabbatical and how, most people are scared of asking. I mean, I know in JSA you have like a process or a provision for sabbatical, and I'm sure there's a way that they also, there's, how to come back from a sabbatical also will be provided, but most places don't have something like that. So for a person who has taken a sabbatical and wants to come back, one of the things that I personally also find difficult is to ask, like to ask what you think you are worth, or you ask what you think you want. So what are some of the things that you did to make sure that you get what you think is worth, what you think you're worth, or what you think is valuable? How did you get back? How did you ask for, negotiate your terms when you got back?
So I think firstly, to answer the first part of the question, it's extremely important to know your worth, and I think that comes from being confident of who you are at any given point of time. The other aspect is asking for what, asking for a sabbatical or asking for anything for that matter. We don't ask sometimes simply out of probably being polite, or I think India also tends to have a very people pleasing culture when it comes to some workplaces. So in that respect, I would say that it's very important to ask, because sometimes you simply don't know what the other person is going to say, and it's just out of the fear of being of hearing a no, or of not wanting to negotiate, that we don't ask. So of course, while you do all of this, you have to ensure reasonable, like you have to be reasonable and patient. But I would of course recommend asking what you think and speaking your mind. And when it comes to coming back to the profession, I think I always knew that I wanted to come back. While you are away, of course, you should not be completely cut out from the system altogether. So there are many ways that maybe you're not actively practicing, maybe you're not going to court, or you're not sitting in arbitrations and all of day-to-day legal activities, but um, you can still be out there doing something related to law, right? You can be writing, you can be publishing, you can be doing something that you're still staying on top of things, and you're still in the market very much so that would help you come back and negotiate your terms. And I guess recruiters can be of great help as well.
Yeah, I think the last part is also true. I think many people don't actually take help from recruiters. At least people I know have not taken help from recruiters. Okay. One thing I wanted to ask you is, as a lady lawyer, have you ever faced any kind of pay disparity? And whatever else you want to speak about pay disparity.
So I think, yes, overall in the profession, there may be disparity. There is disparity, let's face it. There are biases and there are stereotypes. However, personally speaking, I have always, I've been with firms, and at Tully and Company, there was no disparity. And now I'm at GSA, and the disputes team I'm currently working with promotes equal participation in pay. So I've been fortunate in that regard, and I haven't faced anything of that nature. But overall, for people who are facing disparity, which I am sure they are in the profession, I would say that don't let it get to you and keep working hard, because hard work is going to pay off definitely. And for those working in firms, if they feel that there is disparity that they are facing, then there are workplaces, there are firms, there are teams which have very healthy work environment and are completely they completely do not support, in fact they discourage disparity. So it's important to know that there are options and that you can always break out of where you are and aspire for something bigger.
Shreya, just to sum up this entire segment on sabbatical, for someone who's on the fence, who wants to take a sabbatical but is still not sure or still not having the courage to actually take the step, what are some of the tips or what are some of the things that you want to tell such a person on to help them decide whether they should take a sabbatical or not?
So I think the fear aspect, I would say talk to someone who's taken a sabbatical. Actually, talk to more than one person who's taken a sabbatical, because there are plenty of people who have taken sabbaticals and they can definitely guide you and definitely, um, sound you of the do's and don'ts on a sabbatical, so to say, and also motivate you to take one, because that always helps. Like hearing someone's story is always helpful. And once you do decide to take a sabbatical, I recommend that you plan it well in advance. Decide how long is it viable for you to be away, both in terms of the workspace you are in or the sector that you're in. Then the third aspect, because of which a lot of people I personally know don't take a sabbatical, planning finances is so important, because you don't want to be under pressure while you're on your sabbatical. So plan your finances well in advance as soon as you decide to take a sabbatical. And I would say, in relation to re-entering the workforce, while you're away, it's important to not cut out the system completely. Stay on top of changing legal landscape. And if you have a client-facing job, or if you're an independent counsel, or if you are even in a law firm where you have a client-facing role, then updating your clients and staying in touch is also very, very important.
I want to just break down your answer a little bit, because there are a lot of useful nuggets of information there. So when you say that plan your finances or plan for your sabbatical, in terms of a realistic timeline, how much time what was your story? Because I agree that speaking to someone who's taken a sabbatical makes a huge difference, and gives you the confidence also to actually take the step. But to make it more specific, how long did you start? How much time did it take for you to actually start from the start of the planning to the time that you actually, this is my day one of sabbatical from then?
For anyone who knows me already, they know I'm quite a planner. So I think I planned my sabbatical for good 6 months. I mean, it was something that was on my mind on and off, and I always knew that despite the usual narrative of not taking a sabbatical, I always knew I will take a sabbatical at some point in my life. So financially, I was always planning for a sabbatical. When it comes to making the decision, it took me about 3 months to decide. And then, of course, the most firms have a fairly decent notice period, so that gave me another 3 months to plan for my sabbatical. So about overall 6 months.
So when you said plan for, you mean like what are you going to do in those 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months?
Yes.
You took 6 months off?
I took about 7 months off.
So what will you actually do in those 7 months? Then planning your travels or your
planning your travel, or if there's a skill that you want to build, be it related to law, be it not related to law. You may want to take a short course somewhere abroad or in India. So planning those things are important as well, so that you don't waste any time.
Yeah, I know. And I really liked what you said about financial planning as well, because that is something nobody really speaks about so much. We somehow don't speak about finances at all in our everyday conversations. So how did you plan your finances? Did you have every month your salary will come and you have an account that you put away, which you don't touch for anything? Was it something like that?
Yes.
And then you would invest from that account, or it would just keep growing?
Both actually, but like I said, I'm a planner, so for me, I had a sabbatical account.
for everyone who's on the fence, Shreya's given you very actionable points, including telling you how to plan your finances. So please do listen to this part. If not anything else in the episode, listen to this if you want to know how to real. And I think I have spoken to her before she took the sabbatical. I have kept speaking to her during her sabbatical and then also when she came back. So I know for a fact that she did it in a very practical and very thought out manner, very organized, and she didn't have any hiccups here and there saying that I don't know what I'm going to do, I'm just sitting around wasting my time and things like that. So you should definitely speak to her, I think, if you want to know what to do. So now we are coming to the last segment, okay, absolutely last segment of our podcast. And this is just a fun thing to get to know, not only know you better, but also for everybody else to get some sort of actionable tips from you. So the first thing I want to ask you, so it's called 5 4 3 2 1, like I ask you 5 of something, 4 of something, 3 of something, like that. So 5 productivity tips that you have learned, or it can be apps, it can be software, it can be anything that has helped you.
So I think discipline is, for me, is the most important. That's one. Starting the day by doing something that you love. It gives you, a sense of achievement, and for me, it sets the tone for my entire day. So it can be something as small as a 5-minute meditation, brewing your own coffee and sipping it in peace, reading the newspaper or a chapter of a book that you like or a sport that you like to play. So for me, that's very important. Then planning your calendar, be it your daily work tasks, task list or holidays. I say this because, lawyers are constantly juggling different matters, engagements, and most often I find people in my profession complaining about lack of personal time. So I guess planning is key again. Planning your calendar properly really helps. Now coming specifically to law, what I would say is knowledge development. So law is of course vast, and even if you're practicing in a niche area, the law is constantly changing, it's evolving, be it legislative framework or precedent wise. So I recommend spending time on a weekly basis, if not daily, to upgrade your knowledge, because we're constantly learning every day, and I guess that is not changing or stopping for anyone in the profession. Fifth, I would say this is something that I really enjoy doing, which is write and publish, be it articles, contributions to columns, papers, whatever it is. Choose an area of law in which you would like to specialize or you specialize in already. That kind of gives you, in time to gain in-depth knowledge of that area, and also reach out to people, because there are so many areas of law, and reading, all lawyers love reading. So I think publishing and reaching out to people, that is something I really enjoy doing.
I'm so happy that you said reading last, because that's the perfect segue into the next question, which is 4 books that you'd recommend.
4 books that I would recommend is one is Ikigai. This book basically talks about finding your life purpose. So finding something that inspires you to get out of bed every day without complaining. And it's very important to find that purpose, because for me personally, it's very important to enjoy and be passionate about what I'm doing, be it law, be it anything else. So that is one. Then of course, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, for understanding how balance is key, because life is beyond our so to say professional identity, and we tend to lose sight of that very often. There's another very interesting book that I read recently, which is called Maybe You Should Talk to Someone. It's like a book written by a therapist on accounts of her different clients and patients basically. And I'm someone who's all for mental health, and law as a profession can be high pressure, and mental health needs to also be treated at par with physical ailments, and that's something that law firms are starting to do now, but I'm not sure how much that is being adapted overall in the profession, in say counsel practice or other aspects of law. So that is the book that I recommend everyone reads. And more recently, I've started reading some scriptures. So currently I'm reading the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, And I know that scriptures can be heavy and they may not be, everyone's cup of tea, but I assure you that scriptures carry valuable and, expansive knowledge that one can apply on a day-to-day basis of how to be in life. So those are the
Yeah, and I agree with all of your 4 recommendations. I'm actually currently reading Ikigai, but the others, all the other 3, I think I've read. No, Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, I haven't read, but I'm getting into yoga, and I'm reading that V.K.S. Iyengar's book on asanas, and there's nothing to read. You just look at that book to make sure that you're doing the asana properly. But yeah. Now, 3 tips that you have for practical tips that you will have for young lawyers. You've given multiple during the course of our conversation, but if you just have to give 3 tips for young lawyers or law students or literally anyone in the profession.
Okay, so I think for young law students and graduates, when it comes to education, I would say choose the college that you go to, choose your trajectory carefully, be mindful of what you're choosing. Don't just follow the trend, because sometimes just following the trend doesn't get you where you're meant to be. So explore, and make your own decisions through your own experiences. That is one. Second, I would say work hard, because there is no substitute for working hard. And third, I would say is that the profession can be overwhelming at times. It is voluminous, definitely. So take time out for yourself, be it while you're studying or be it while you're pursuing your career as a counsel or as a lawyer. So there has to be balance, and that's for everyone actually, not just you.
Yeah, I agree. Now, 2 life lessons that you've learned so far.
Okay. I would say, so the profession takes time to build, but doors do open up sooner or later. So patience is key. Be patient, keep working hard. And once things start working out, don't become complacent. Consistency is equally important, because with great, success also comes great responsibility and accountability. So consistency in that aspect is extremely vital.
That's such a beautiful advice, actually. Both of the things that you said is it's applicable to all of us. And I'm feeling like a new lawyer or a young lawyer with this whole daily lawyer thing, because it's so out of my comfort zone and so different for me. So I felt like you directly spoke to me with that answer. And it's so funny. Everyone who's come on the podcast and everyone I've asked this question to, the two things that all of them have said when I ask them about tips or life lessons is, the first thing is about patience. Like, have patience. You're not going to get everything overnight. And the second thing is about constantly working hard, because I do think that the generation who's coming out now are they don't put in that many hours, or then they put in that many hours for very short amount of time, and then they want to they want things faster and easier than possibly what we wanted. And we are not that much older to them, but still, at least that's been my experience when I see interns, or I see younger people who come to me to do like work. They work for 2 months, 3 months, and then they're like, no, we want something different, we want to change. So from that context, I really liked your answer. And finally, the best advice that you have ever received.
I think that would be that you should give it, no matter what it is that you're doing, you should give it your 100%. And I say this because what tends to happen is that we as professionals tend to prioritize, bigger matters or a bigger assignment over something not as big as the other assignment. But it's very important to equally give 100% to anything that you're doing. And that especially goes for, younger lawyers, because you will get to doing the bigger assignments, you will get to those bigger matters. But it's very important to start with the smaller things and give it 100%. It's only then will you reach those bigger matters or those bigger assignments. So give everything that you do, even if it's making a list of dates or preparing an index, give it your 100%.
Very true. Lovely advice. I really appreciate, Shreya, how you tried to keep all of the answers within the realm of law. It was not necessary, but I really appreciate it, because then you make it really relevant to the audience, hopefully, who's going to listen to this episode on whichever podcasting platform. So thank you so much for coming and for giving your time so generously
Thank you
today.
for having me, and it has been a wonderful conversation. I hope whoever listens to the podcast enjoys, and there is some valuable guidance that I have been able to provide right here.
I'm sure, because you spoke about so many things which are practical to not just young lawyers or law students, but for all of us. Thanks, Shreya. Thank you so much.